And this is from someone in Australia, a Niners fan from afar, trying to understand the full context of this team. And it's an interesting question when you think of it. So simple and yet so important. Why have the Niners struggled so much since the 1990s? I mean, this was a team that had a winning season every single year from, I want to say, 1983 to 2002, something like that. Almost 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the answer has to be ownership, right? Like what's changed?
What changed? Yeah.
Right. Teams go through coaches, players change, coaches change. But once the culture changes, that's it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's I hate to do it, York, but it's on your shoulders. You haven't provided a winning organization.
He's the common denominator. There's no other way to put it. It started off with the mom owning it, and then she delegated it to her husband, and then they delegated it to their son when he was 27, which is amazing in retrospect. But it's them. And I think, people give them credit for spending. I mean, the organization is worth billions of dollars, multi-billions. I mean, it's one of the richest organizations in football. So yeah, they spend on players.
Yep.
Every team spends on players.
Yeah.
There's no Oakland A's of the NFL that we're like, we're a small market. We can only – no, every team spends on players. I think the real mark of a team that's all about winning, a first-rate organization that's all about winning in 2021 is how you spend outside of players. And they do spend a lot on head coaches. How do they spend on their training staff? What do they spend on their stadium? What do they spend on their grass? What do they spend on the assistant coaches?
Yeah.
All the other things that you don't have to spend on. It seems like they've cut corners at times. And the thing about Eddie DeBartolo is that he spared no expense.
Yeah, he spared no expenses anywhere. And just the culture. I mean, everybody talks about how it was a family back then. I mean, that started with Eddie DeBartolo, and it went all the way down. I mean, Walsh talked about it. Everybody that was in and out, Carmen Policy, anybody who was in and out of this organization talked about a family atmosphere. That's just the way it was. And it hasn't been that for so many years. And, yes, obviously they went from one great quarterback to the next, 2 top 10 quarterbacks of all time. And then once you lose that, you're going to naturally take a step back as an organization. You're not always going to have a top guy, but to be as bad as they have been really over the course of the last 20 plus years that's not just on quarterbacks. That's 100% on ownership.
But let's be real clear. Like let's do the timeline. All right. Yeah. So they're winning. They have Seifert and Young. They go to a Super Bowl. They win.
Yep.
They fire Seifert. This is DeBartolo. They hire Mariucci, who's not the greatest coach of all time. He's not Andy Reid. He's not even John Gruden, but he wins. He wins with Steve Young.
Yep.
Then he wins with Jeff Garcia, who wasn't his choice. It was Bill Walsh's choice, but he wins.
Yeah.
And then the Yorks get the team. They inherit this team that has Mariucci and it has Jeff Garcia.
Yep.
And after a playoff appearance where they won a playoff game, they beat the Giants in that dramatic comeback where Jed York says he was there. It was the best experience of his life. Next week, they lose to the eventual Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yep.
The Yorks fire Mariucci. And I think I want to say, they keep Jeff Garcia for one more year, and then they get rid of him. And then, really, they had no succession plan at quarterback after that. And in 2005, God love Alex Smith, they picked the wrong quarterback. So it's a lot about the quarterback, but, I mean, the Yorks came in and tore down what the DeBartolos had, what they had inherited from the DeBartolos. And then they're still in the process of building their first successful, sustainable team.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And let's just think about it. I guess let's look at it a little bit fair too, right? So you have the ownership change, and then to your point, they went from great quarterback, very good quarterback, to picking the wrong quarterback, which will always set you back 3 to 5 years anyways, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got an owner that is just putting all the wrong pieces in the organization. And I mean, Erickson, Singletary, I mean, how many coaches did they go through that were absolutely atrocious? And then when you finally get a good one, you can't even get along with them, and so you run them out of town. I don't know, man. It's been a frustrating 20 years outside of a few good ones.
Yeah. So they're very good at tearing things down, but when they do that, they're really not good at building things back up, and they're still in the process. I feel like that's why they have been so patient with Kyle, because they've been so rash with everyone else, and they're trying to show that they can build some stability, because the word is out on the Yorks. They fire you. And you go back and look at that Alex Smith interview from just a couple of years ago where he was in Washington, and he talked about how bad the culture was on the Niners. He wasn't talking about Harbaugh. He's talking about the Yorks. And he said, the line of communication is all broken. You can't trust what you hear. It's not all about winning. No one ever said that about Eddie DeBartolo and Carmen Policy.
No.
And, burden of proof still on them. So that's the long answer.
What's funny is Alex Smith talked about the 49ers organization the same way that Shanahan talks about the Washington organization.
That's true. And, I think they're probably, if we're being honest, there's a lot of carryover between those organizations and between the Yorks and the Snyders or Snyder.
Yep.
There's a lot of, Snyder, he's good at making money. Is he all about winning? Hard to say. In fact, I think it's not hard to say. We're going to be more diplomatic to the Yorks because we're stuck with them. But, and it seems like Jed wants to win, but wanting to win and being committed to doing everything it takes to win are two totally different things.
Absolutely.
And you just go back and listen to Alex Smith interview and tell me if you think the Yorks are committed to doing everything it takes to win the way the DeBartolos were.
Yeah, absolutely. Persispro has a great comment. Like Shardell said, Jed York is a joke. Listen, if Shardell says it, that's what it is.
True. I also have infinite scrolling now, so I'll never miss another comment again.
Oh, did they actually give that to you?
They did. I now have infinite scrolling, so the days of me losing comments are over. Thank goodness. You told me about this. It's beta testing. It's true.
Yes.
I feel privileged. Trey Niner says, we've had some bad years, but let's put things in perspective. What other teams have been to Super Bowls and NFC Championship games since 2010? Sure.
For sure. Yeah. That's definitely a fair statement. We've gotten some good years, and there's nothing to be upset about that. But compared to what it was in the 80s and 90s, I also feel like this might be a comment. I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe you're a younger fan, and so you don't know the glory years, or you're not used to those expectations. But, I am. I certainly am. And when you don't have them and you go through 12 bad years, 10 bad years to get to the Harbaugh era, it's not fun. And it's not.
The 49ers were the standard of excellence in the league for 20 years, for 2 decades, the way that the Patriots have been. And they just never had losing seasons. Even if they didn't win the Super Bowl, they were competitive. If they got to the Super Bowl, they won.
Yep.
York has had 2 teams go to the Super Bowl. They lost both times, and neither team has shown an ability to have longevity. The burden of proof is still on Kyle. He's on 1 winning season. So York, they're still searching. In a lot of ways, they're Moses in the desert. Always do Old Testament. I don't know what it is, man, but he ain't in the promised land yet. Eddie DeBartolo had the promised land bumping for about 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
They basically had like the Roman Empire. Freaking,
they really did.
These guys are like lost in the desert. With a map, and Kyle Shanahan is at the end. Oh, we'll see. All right, I lost it. Anyway, Twisted Eva said, "Here's $10. Thank you. That was hella nice. I appreciate that." Do the Yorks seem to you like the classic micromanagers that don't know what they are doing? Perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps. I wish I knew. From what I understand, you just can't trust a word they say, allegedly. And it's always tough to do business with people like that. They'll tell you something, and the next day they'll pretend like they never told it to you.
Right.
It's like, what am I, crazy land? Well, you said that. That's what I've heard from people who've done. It's hard if they just say things and don't mean them. Hard to say where they're coming from. And again, who owns this team? The mom. Where is she?
Yeah.
It's not really Jed's team. There's someone in the background that no one knows, really.
Yeah, I don't look at it as a micromanager standpoint. Like, obviously Dallas, that situation's a micromanager right? Jones is the ultimate micromanager. He's got his hands in everything, or he used to. Now his son does. But I don't see that situation. I see a passive aggressive owner, kind of to your point. Somebody that says one thing and then changes their mind is probably like, I'll fire you through a text message. Like, that's how I see that going down.